Welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm Kathleen Walter. With us now is Dr. Robert Rabil, Professor of Middle East Studies at Florida Atlantic University. He is the author of Syria, United States, and the War on Terror in the Middle East, and most recently, Religion, National Identity and Confessional Politics in Lebanon, the Challenge of Islamism. And Dr. Rabil, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well, recently the Obama administration announced that the Syrian regime had crossed a red line in that country's civil war and announced that it would be providing some military aid to the opposition. Can this limited approach hasten the removal of Bashar al-Assad?
Well, simply put, no. No, it's not gonna remove anytime soon the regime of Assad for different factors. First, now you have a strong intervention in Syria by Iran, by certain Iraqi, and by Hezbollah. And their intervention mainly is to prevent the collapse of the Assad regime. And whatever modest weapons the president is talking about, it's not going to go ahead. And I think myself make a dent now. Recently, the regime has been on the offensive, not on the defensive, and has been making inroads in what he thinks that it's gonna be his geostrategic areas. And I think now we are going to see more battles in the countryside of Aleppo and Aleppo itself, in the countryside of Damascus, and the countryside of Homs, where he's gonna connect that with the Alawi heartline, and including those areas where you have a lot of mixed population, Ismaili, Shia, and Christian. No, and why I say no, and I wrote about it as a matter of fact. I say no because it's a new phase in the conflict. The conflict has become deeply sectarian, and I spoke about it as the conflict has transformed into a war of sectarian attrition, or a war of attrition based on sectarian grounds. And this has made the conflict, mainly expanded the conflict. Look what happened recently in Lebanon, 2 days ago, on Monday in Lebanon. You had fighting in the southern city of Sidon. 18 Lebanese soldiers were killed. And you have skirmishes here and there in different parts of the country. You have Iraqi coming in, you have Iranians coming in, and on the other hand, you have many Salafi and Salafi jihadi are going into Syria. So whatever modest he's speaking about is not going to remove the regime.
There have been all of these reports that Iran and Hezbollah helped turn the tide in favor of the Assad regime. Can you talk to us for a second just about how you see Iran and Hezbollah's role in this conflict and what their vision is here, the geopolitical strategy
well,
for the region?
Well, it's a very good question. Iran has a strategy in the Middle East. Let's not forget that. And it's a strategy built in the history of the Middle East. What do I mean by that? Iran doesn't want Arab, or doesn't want Israel, or doesn't want Turkey, mainly doesn't want regional power to dictate the politics of the region, given that in its history, and its very modern history, recently, you have the Iran-Iraq war and the sanction against it. So you wanna really, based upon its own vision in the Middle East, it would like to have a say in the politics of the region. And in order to do that, it needs to have allies and an axis. And that axis of power, what at one time King Abdullah of Jordan called the Shia Crescent, is at play now. So it is gonna support Iraq, the Shia of Iraq. It's going to support the Syrian regime. It's imperative that is going to go ahead and support the Syrian regime. And for Hezbollah, as I mentioned in my writings also, Hezbollah really wasn't at all happy in intervening, but it had to intervene. And it had to intervene for 3 factors. First, it knows that if the regime is gonna collapse, it's gonna lose its strategic depths. Second, they know if the regime is gonna collapse, Israel might go ahead and clip its wings. And third, Hezbollah always sees itself as taking a role in Lebanon and in the region. So this is a new role for Hezbollah in the region, so as to help Iran shape the region. Let's not forget now,
So, Dr. Rabil, in one of your recent articles, you noted Washington's dilemma. How does it affect Iranian policy in Syria so that Tehran abridges its regional ambitions? If you were advising the Obama administration, what would you tell them?
Well, I think if he would like to give the opposition modest weaponry, he has to give them, I would say, some sophisticated weapons. And I would go further myself, have the stamina to stay the fight and reclaim leadership. And what I mean by reclaiming leadership, you should have our allies with us, Turkey, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia, and make sure they work in concert. And they work with concert, I think, only with the leadership of United States. And also, I think mainly here, it's an intelligence war. And I would like to see United States, for example. I don't like to see American troops, American boots on Syrian ground. But I would like to see, indirect way of going in. For example, I'll give you an example. I was thinking about it. How about we work very closely with the Jordanian intelligence? If we are so worried about the weapons going into the wrong hand, how about if we speak with Salim Idris, the head of the Free Syrian Army, and tell him, listen, embed certain Jordanian intelligence officers in your armed forces and let them have the sophisticated weapon so as to know where it goes. So mainly, I think always when you have a will, you have a way to go about it. But you need to have the political capital and you have to have the political will. And I think that the administration is torn by different currents. We don't want to get involved deeply. We cannot let the others involve deeply. Let's give them modest weapons, not modest weapons. So you have this steering the administration apart. And I think the administration should be more focused. Yes, we are going to be there indirectly, not to be involved, to be sucked in, but we are going to have the initiative. We are going to have support these people that we trust, and we can do that. And as I mentioned now, since it has become sectarian warfare, it's extremely important now. I read reports that Hazara from Afghanistan are going to fight. I know from the Arabic media, a lot of Shia now in Damascus guarding the holy shrine there. So what you need to do is now, it's an attrition war, try to exhaust and always leave the door open for a negotiated settlement. This is what our objective should be. And for the removal of the regime, mainly now the conflict has entered into a new phase. All those who spoke about the regime is gonna collapse soon, now hasn't collapsed. It was wrong miscalculation from the beginning. You have now sectarian warfare. That sectarian warfare now is slipping into Lebanon, is slipping into Iraq, and really it's becoming more dangerous than ever before.
Iran has a new president now. How should the U.S. and Israel deal with him? And do you see him altering Iran's nuclear calculus?
Okay, for the first part of the question, we should deal with him as we have been dealing. You had the pattern now, really. So to follow the same policy. And the president said that he is against, he's not going to allow Iran to acquire weapons. So mainly, is that the policy of the United States? The other part of the question, if we are going to see a change, mainly we are going to see his actions. Actions speak louder than words. And I think myself, this is what I think myself. I think Iran really has a strategic objective in acquiring the nuclear weapons or nuclear program advanced enough to have or to be transitioned into a nuclear weapon program. But what he can do is that what he can do, similar to what Khatami did, he would reduce this confrontational discourse. He would reduce tension with Europeans and mainly with us, the Americans. He can work on that. And he can tell the Ayatollah Khamenei, and the high scholar, senior ulama there, listen, we are going to continue that program, but why the confrontation now? Let's go slowly with it. So what I think, if he's going to make a change, he's going to make a change in slowing the program so as not to provoke confrontation with the West. I don't think he's going to forsake or relinquish the program.
Last question for you, Dr. Rabil, is on a totally separate topic. The Obama administration has asked Moscow to hand over Edward Snowden. Moscow denies he's even there. How does this complicate diplomatic relations between the U.S. and Moscow?
Well, it's already complicated. You know, we have now recently, I wouldn't say complicated to the extent that we don't speak with Russia. Russia mainly now is trying to assert more of an international role. Russia is not happy with United States having, you know, the hegemonic power in the United States. Russia has allies, you know, in the world, from China to other parties in the world. And what I think, it's not going to complicate it more than it is complicated. I think that I heard Lavrov, I read the Lavrov probably today or yesterday, Snow, what's his name? Snowden. Yeah, Snowden, he's not there. I think he is in the transit area waiting for a plane to take him to Cuba or Ecuador.
All right, Dr. Robert Rabil, as always, good to see you. Thanks for being with us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And thank you for watching Newsmax TV.